In shocking news, the UFA center for the Vancouver Canucks, Bo Horvat, highly anticipated to be traded ahead of this deadline, has finally been moved, and it's been to the New York Islanders. Breaking down the trade, the return to the Canucks, the winners, the losers, and how this affects the betting market, and more. Welcome back to Edgework here on the Hammer Betting Network. You can usually find us live Monday through Friday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, but as you know now, there has been some breaking news in the NHL. Center for the Vancouver Canucks has been traded. Bo Horvat is on the move to the New York Islanders here. So we're going to dig into what's gone on with this trade, some winners, some losers, and the impact on the betting market. But if you enjoy the content here on this channel, if you enjoy this video, please make sure to like this video. Also subscribe to the Edgework YouTube channel. But Rob, let's dig into the trade itself before we start to discuss the future impact on the betting market and what we could see with the Islanders here. Straight up, the trade, Vancouver moves on from Bo Horvat, who was in the final year of his deal there. There was much anticipation about him being moved on from. We saw the whole catastrophe of the situation with Bruce Boudreau there. Then it rolls into the rumors around the agent being in Vancouver. The team won't talk to the agent. Then next thing you know, there's a Kuzmenko signing announced. Now Bo Horvat is officially on the move to the Islanders, and he goes there for Anthony Beauvillier, Aatu Raty, a prospect for the Islanders, and a protected 2023 first-round pick. First reactions to the trade here, where are you at? Like, why did the Islanders make this trade for UFA when they're looking out of the playoffs right now? And, I mean, who's a winner, who's a loser in this deal?
Yeah, so my first reaction was confusion. I got a push alert to my phone. It said Islanders acquire Bo Horvat. I was like, that might not be right. And then I went to Twitter to check it out. And indeed, it's the Islanders. I'm very puzzled as to why the Islanders would make this deal. Now, obviously, they might value Bo Horvat very differently than I do. The players that they traded away very differently than I do. Conditional first-round pick, protected. But it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for a team that, in my estimation, has about a 15% chance of making the playoffs to pull off this type of deal. Now they have to sign Bo Horvat, or else this is like an absolute huge L for them. But the problem is, you're essentially going to be paying Bo Horvat at like the peak of what he is as a player as well. Like, he's producing like a $9.5 million player this year, but yeah. Is he that player going forwards? He's going to command a long-term deal with a high average value as well. So I don't really get it for the Islanders, because the Islanders, to me, are still several pieces away from being a contender, like several. So in my opinion, the Islanders were better off going into a stage of a rebuild rather than acquiring this type of player. So from that standpoint, confusing. From the Canucks standpoint, typically as you get closer to the trade deadline, the value of these players is going to go up and up and up. There's going to be like a move that triggers something from a contending team where they acquire a piece. Then everybody wants to acquire a piece, and you see all sorts of crazy trades around the deadline. There's a notion out there that, well, everyone knows Vancouver needs to trade Bo Horvat, so they're not going to be able to get as much value for him at the deadline. Well, yeah. I mean, we've seen this time and time again at the trade deadline years past. Teams can get value for significant pieces, especially if a team thinks that Bo Horvat's going to put them over the top. So the timing of the trade for Vancouver is honestly a little bit weird. The return for me for Vancouver, lackluster. Beauvillier, fine player, but he's been a sieve in his own end for the entirety of the year. He really has essentially fallen off a cliff this season. So maybe they're buying low on him, but they're selling Bo Horvat. So I don't know much about the prospect going their way. Second round pick. Again, Vancouver might have scouted this guy. They think that, this is a difference maker. Who am I to say when it comes to that? But overall, Zack, I'm just kind of puzzled by everything here. The timing of the deal, where Horvat is ending up, the return, none of it really makes much sense to me.
Yeah, and you're talking about timing of things too, and some of that you even just have to look at. This guy's having a career year here. He's 27 years old. He's a UFA at the end of this season. You're talking about the Islanders are going to have to sign him. okay, now they're in a little bit of a stranglehold on that in terms of what's the value you're gonna get back out of the guy. And okay, you're a team that's gonna trade for a UFA going into the deadline, and I mean, we're even far away from the deadline at this point, so it just adds to the confusion of the timing of things. But maybe they're in a little bit of a desperation where they think their team's in a better spot than they are. But it's like, you're looking at Bo Horvat right now. Through 49 games played, he's got 31 goals, 23 assists. He's on pace to have a career year here. He's already tied his career high in goals. It's just an interesting thing all around. But we're talking about an Islanders team that he's going to now, and maybe some of that timing just goes to the desperation of where they're at in terms of looking outside looking in on the playoffs. Mm-hmm. They're 1 point back of Buffalo, who's ahead of them, but they're 2 points out of a playoff spot behind Pittsburgh. They have 3 more games played than Pittsburgh, and now the most recent odds that I've seen on the Islanders to make the playoffs here, plus 325. It's an interesting thing all around. Do you think that this Bo Horvat trade puts them in a better spot to make the playoffs? You're talking about they're missing players still. They're missing pieces. This doesn't put them over the edge. Like, where do you kind of evaluate that? And then not only is it where are the Islanders, but the teams ahead of them. Somebody has to come out of there in order for them to jump past and make the playoffs here.
For sure. So when you talk about the odds to make the playoffs, plus 325 is an implied probability of 23.5%. So basically, you need to say, like, in order to make that bet, you need the Islanders to make the playoffs a quarter of the time. And Horvat is definitely an impactful player, but I had them 15% going into this trade. I can guarantee you that he's not moving the needle for them 9%. Like, right. There's very few players at this point in the season that are going to move the needle that much. Usually it's a goaltender, a team acquiring like a big-name goaltender to upgrade their existing goaltending because the goalies have such an impact on every single game. So, no, I don't think that's a good bet. Again, very confused. The one thing I will say about the Islanders is they didn't give up the package that I thought a team was going to have to give up to get Horvat. So it's actually a good trade for them on their end. They do have options as well, right? Like, if they don't like what Horvat is asking for, they can't reach a deal, there's still another month to the deadline where they can turn around and flip him as well. So they have the option there in that they have an asset which they can trade to a contending team. What if things go downhill for them after the All-Star break here? They lose a bunch of games in a row. They're out of it. Do they need to keep Horvat? Can they turn around and dish him and get a better package than they gave up to Vancouver? So there's a lot of options there overall. Ultimately, I don't think that's going to happen. But do I view the Islanders in a vastly different light today than I did, a couple hours ago before this deal? No, I don't. I just think that it's, again, all around very confusing. And especially when you look at the Eastern Conference, both conferences this year, let's say both conferences. The East, you have Boston as like this front runner right now, but it's so tightly knit. Like, there's so many good teams that are in the East that I have a hard time believing that one of those teams would not make a phone call and say, hey, this puts us over the top. Like, this gets us to be that top level team. And in the West, it's the same thing. It's like there's no runaways this year, right? The West is so tightly packed. You can have all these teams making it. And I just feel the timing is very weird, feels rushed. Obviously, Vancouver thinks this is a great return or they wouldn't have pulled the trigger. But I don't know. I from the outside looking in, when I saw the immediate terms, I was like, the Islanders won this trade, but there's a chance that they also lose this trade if they end up signing Horvat to like a huge annual average value, or just like they can kind of lose in that they've put themselves in like this middling group of teams, in my opinion, which is never where you want to be. You either want to have a chance to win or just be crap. And like the in-between, I don't know. So interesting overall, but from a market impact perspective, I don't think you should change your opinion of the Islanders all that much going forwards. There will be some people rushing to bet Stanley Cup odds and so on and so forth. I don't think those are good bets. I would honestly just avoid those right now.
All right, so let me ask you this then. The Islanders make this move. They don't have any more games ahead of the All-Star break, so they're going to have some time here to let him acclimate to New York and get out here. But as we've discussed here, we're about a month away from the trade deadline. There's going to be more moves. There's going to be other Eastern Conference teams who go out there and try to improve. I can't see Pittsburgh and Washington sitting still, who are the two teams holding the final wildcard spots, and just hanging on and saying, all right, let it ride with what we've got. I think they'll start to make moves as well. But if you're going to look at this Islanders team, you see this big move that they've just made, acquiring this big piece. You still feel like they're a couple pieces away. Just speculation. This is nothing concrete, but do you see them continuing to try to make more moves over the next month here based on what we just saw today?
Man, like, I think that would be so absurd. I really do. Who knows? I mean, they could just be buyers here, and they're trying to get in, and they do have a goalie in Sorokin that like could steal series after series after series. So maybe it's just like, let's get in and see what happens type of situation. But if you look at roughly where these teams stand in the betting markets right now, the Penguins and the Capitals are somewhere in the 10 to 15 range in terms of where the market is ranking those teams. Maybe a little bit higher than that, 10 to 13, somewhere in there. The Islanders, I think the market ranks them around 20th right now. They're not increasing that gap by enough, in my opinion, with this one deal. I don't know what the motivation is for the Islanders, other than it's just, I mean, listen, there's an argument that, like, I think the Islanders won the deal. So from that perspective, you make a trade where it really didn't cost them as much as I think people thought the market value was for the player that they acquire. So from that standpoint, they win it, but it's just very confusing because it puts them, like I said, in this state of, who are the Islanders now? Where are they? Like, they're just, in my opinion, an average team. And that's the worst spot to be in, I think, as an NHL franchise. And it also just puts them in a situation now where Horvat has as much ammunition as he wants to demand a salary and a length of contract that, I mean, could be upwards of $10 million here for like 6 or 7 years. And you almost have to give into it at this point because of the capital that you've surrendered, or you turn around and move on, but you've also created a situation where other teams now know the value of that player or what they could give in return. So I've seen a lot of NHL trades for a long time. This one was just like really caught me off guard as absolutely not what I expected at all from either team.
Yeah, and you're talking about Pittsburgh and Washington and the market values on the players and stuff. Washington right now is still minus 120 to make the playoffs, and Pittsburgh minus 400 to make the playoffs. So, like, those are the teams that would have to be hopped over by the Islanders, and as it stands right now, to get in. And market's still looking at them, saying like, hey, they're still in a good spot to hang on and continue to make the playoffs. And even as you mentioned, Sorokin, you're sitting there saying, well, we'll get there and he can win games. You still got to get there. And that's the immediate issue for this Islanders team right now. So interesting to see. It was very interesting to see Bo Horvat on the move today. It did feel a little bit rushed, especially reading some tweets this morning being like, well, the Vancouver Canucks are going to start to feel some pressure about having to move them. And there you go. There's the trade. So interesting all around. We will continue to update with more news like this and how this impacts the betting markets here on the Edgework channel. So if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to like this video. You can also let us know in the comments below your thoughts on the trade, who you feel won this one, whether you feel personally like the market accurately reflects this transition from Bo Horvat going from the Vancouver Canucks and New York Islanders, and the Islanders' odds to make the playoffs at this point. Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe to this channel, hit like on this video, and for more daily betting previews and picks, you can find us live Monday through Friday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Thanks everyone for tuning in here tonight. Rob, appreciate the insight. We'll see everyone shortly.